Let's be honest. First Chronicles is boring. Not in a subtle way. Not in a, well, it's just not for everyone way. It's boring in the way that watching paint dry is boring. In the way that reading a phone book is boring. In the way that listening to someone read terms and conditions out loud is boring. It's boring because it's 9 chapters of genealogies. 9 chapters of administrative paperwork from the Bronze Age. And the sons of this guy were these other guys, and those guys had sons, and here are their names. On and on. For pages. If you've ever tried to read First Chronicles straight through, you have my sympathy, my respect, and my condolences, because it's brutal. And here's the thing, I'm not being flippant, I'm not mocking the text, I'm just acknowledging what every honest reader knows, that genealogies are hard, they're necessary, they're important. They tell us who people were and where they came from and why they mattered. But they're hard to read because they're lists, just lists. And lists don't have plot, they don't have drama, they don't have character development, they just list. But, and this is important, tucked into those 9 chapters of names, hidden in the middle of chapter 4, between Asher and Kenaz, between forgotten men with unpronounceable names. There are 2 verses that break the pattern, 2 verses that tell a story, and those 2 verses contain one of the most famous prayers in the entire Bible. Let me read it to you. 1 Chronicles chapter 4, verses 9 and 10. Jabez was more honorable than his brothers. His mother had named him Jabez, saying, I gave birth to him in pain. Jabez cried out to the God of Israel, Oh, that you would bless me and enlarge my territory. Let your hand be with me and keep me from harm, so that I will be free from pain. And God granted his request. That's it. That's the entire text. 49 words in the original Hebrew. And tonight, we're going to slow down. We're going to sit with those 49 words. We're going to think about the man who spoke them, the life he lived, the name he carried, the prayer he prayed, and the God who answered. This is a meditation, not a sermon, not a lesson. Just a long, slow, thoughtful walk through 2 verses and the world they came from. If you find comfort in slow, deliberate stories, told at a pace designed to let your mind rest, I'd be honored if you subscribed. But for now, let's breathe, let's settle in, and let's meet Jabez. Before we can understand Jabez, we need to understand where we find him. And where we find him is in a genealogy. Now, I just said genealogies are boring, and they are, but they're also sacred. To the people who wrote them, genealogies weren't tedious paperwork. They were the archive of identity. In a world without birth certificates or social security numbers or DNA tests, your genealogy was everything. It told you who you were, where you came from, what tribe you belonged to, what land was yours, whether you could serve in the temple, whether you could be king. Your genealogy was your proof of existence. And 1 Chronicles is one giant genealogy. The book opens with Adam. Yes, literally Adam, the first human. And it traces the line all the way down through Noah, through Abraham, through Jacob, through the 12 tribes, through the exile in Babylon, and back to the return. It's a book written for a people who needed to remember who they were. Because they'd almost forgotten. They'd been scattered, conquered, exiled. And now they were back in their land, trying to rebuild, trying to reconnect with their history. And so, the chronicler sat down and wrote out everyone, every lineage, every clan, every family tree. And to understand the texture of that world, to understand the rhythm of it, I want to read you some of it, not summarize it, not explain it, just read it. Let the names wash over you. Let them become a rhythm. a cadence, a slow, hypnotic wave of sound. Because this is the world Jabez lived in, a world where names mattered, where lineage mattered, where being remembered mattered. So let's listen. 1 Chronicles chapter 1. Adam, Seth, Enosh, Kenan, Mahalalel, Jared, Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, Noah. The sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The sons of Japheth, Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tiras. The sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, Rephath, and Togarmah. The sons of Javan, Elisha, Tarshish, Kittim, and Rodanim. The sons of Ham, Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan. The sons of Cush, Seba, Havilah, Sabta, Raama, and Sabteka. The sons of Rama, Sheba, and Dedan. Cush was the father of Nimrod, who grew to be a mighty warrior on earth. Mizraim was the father of the Ludites, Anamites, Lehabites, Naphtuhites, Pathrusites, Casluhites, and Caphtorites. Canaan was the father of Sidon, his firstborn, and of the Hittites, Jebusites, Amorites, Girgashites, Hivites, Archites, Sinites, Arvadites, Zemarites, and Hamathites. The sons of Shem, Elam, Asher, Arphaxad, Lud, and Aram. The sons of Aram, Uz, Hul, Gether, and Meshech. Arphaxad was the father of Shelah, and Shelah the father of Eber. 2 sons were born to Eber. One was named Peleg, because in his time the earth was divided. His brother was named Joktan. Joktan was the father of Almadad, Shelef, Hazarmaveth, Jerah, Hadoram, Uzal, Dikla, Obal, Abimael, Sheba, Ophir, Havilah, and Jobab. All these were sons of Joktan: Shem, Arphaxad, Shelah, Eber, Peleg, Roi, Serug, Nahor, Terah, Abram, that is, Abraham. The sons of Abraham, Isaac and Ishmael. The sons of Ishmael, Nebaioth, the firstborn of Ishmael, Kedar, Adbeel, Mibsam, Mishma, Duma, Massa, Hadad, Tema, Jeter, Naphish, and Kedemah. These were the sons of Ishmael. The sons born to Keturah, Abraham's concubine: Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shuah. The sons of Jokshan, Sheba, and Dedan. The sons of Midian: Epher, Hanok, Abida, and Eldah. All these were descendants of Keturah. Abraham was the father of Isaac. The sons of Isaac: Esau and Israel. The sons of Esau: Eliphaz, Roel, Jush, Jalam, and Korah. The sons of Eliphaz: Teman, Omar, Zepho, Gatam, and Kenaz. And Timnah bore Amalek to Eliphaz. The sons of Roel: Nahath, Zerah, Shammah, and Mizah. The sons of Seir: Lotan, Shobal, Zibeon, Anna, Dishon, Ezer, and Dishan. The sons of Lotan: Hori and Homam. Timnah was Lotan's sister. The sons of Shobal: Alvan, Manahath, Ebal, Shepo, and Onam. The sons of Zibeon: Ayah and Anna. The son of Anna: Dishon. The sons of Dishon: Hemdan, Eshban, Ithran, and Karen. The sons of Ezer: Bilhan, Zavan, and Arkan. The sons of Dishan: Uz and Aaron. These were the kings who reigned in Edom before any Israelite king reigned. Bela son of Beor, whose city was named Dinhaba. When Bela died, Jobab son of Zerah from Bozrah succeeded him as king. When Jobab died, Husham from the land of the Temanites succeeded him as king. When Husham died, Hadad son of Bedad, who defeated Midian in the country of Moab, succeeded him as king. His city was named Avith. When Hadad died, Samlah from Masrekah succeeded him as king. When Samlah died, Shaul from Rehoboth on the river succeeded him as king. When Shaul died, Baal-Hanan, son of Akbor, succeeded him as king. When Baal-Hanan died, Hadad succeeded him as king. His city was named Pau, and his wife's name was Mehetabel, daughter of Matred, the daughter of Mezahab. Hadad also died. 1 Chronicles chapter 2. These were the sons of Israel: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Dan, Joseph, Benjamin, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. The sons of Judah: Onan, and Shelah. These 3 were born to him by a Canaanite woman, the daughter of Shua. Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the Lord's sight, so the Lord put him to death. Tamar, Judah's daughter-in-law, bore him Perez and Zerah. Judah had 5 sons in all, the sons of Perez, Hezron and Hamul. The sons of Zerah, Zimri, Ethan, Heman, Calcol, and Dada, 5 in all. The son of Carmi, Achar, who brought trouble on Israel by violating the ban on taking devoted things. The son of Ethan, Azariah. The sons born to Hezron were Jerahmeel, Ram, and Caleb. Ram was the father of Amminadab, and Amminadab the father of Nahshon, the leader of the people of Judah. Nahshon was the father of Salmon, Salmon the father of Boaz, Boaz the father of Obed, and Obed the father of Jesse. Jesse was the father of Eliab his firstborn. The second son was Abinadab, the third Shemaiah, the fourth Nethanel, the fifth Radai, the sixth Ozem, and the seventh David. Their sisters were Zeruiah and Abigail. Zeruiah's 3 sons were Abishai, Joab, and Asahel. Abigail was the mother of Amasa, whose father was Jether the Ishmaelite. Caleb son of Hezron had children by his wife Azubah and by Jeriath. These were her sons, Jesher, Shobab, and Ardon. When Azubah died, Caleb married Ephrath, who bore him Hur. Hur was the father of Uri, and Uri the father of Bezalel. Later, Hezron went to the daughter of Machir, the father of Gilead. He had married her when he was 60 years old, and she bore him Segub. Segub was the father of Jair, who controlled 23 towns in Gilead, but Gesher and Aram captured Havoth-Jair, as well as Kenath with its surrounding settlements, 60 towns. All these were descendants of Machir, the father of Gilead. After Hezron died in Caleb Ephrathah, Abijah, the wife of Hezron, bore him Asher, the father of Tekoa. The sons of Jerahmeel, the firstborn of Hezron, Ram his firstborn, Bunah, Oren, Ozem, and Ahijah. Jerahmeel had another wife, whose name was Atara. She was the mother of Onam. The sons of Ram, the firstborn of Jerahmeel, Maz, Jamin, and Eker. The sons of Onam, Shammai, and Jada. The sons of Shammai, Nadab, and Abishur. Abishur's wife was named Abihail, who bore him Aban and Molid. The sons of Nadab, Seled, and Apam. Seled died without children. The son of Apam, Ishi, who was the father of Sheshan. Sheshan was the father of Alai. The sons of Jada, Shammai's brother, Jether and Jonathan. Jether died without children. The sons of Jonathan, Peleth, and Zaza. These were the descendants of Jerahmeel. Sheshan had no sons, only daughters. He had an Egyptian servant named Jarha. Sheshan gave his daughter in marriage to his servant Jarha, and she bore him Attai. Attai was the father of Nathan. Nathan, the father of Zabad. Zabad, the father of Ephlal. Ephlal, the father of Obed. Obed, the father of Jehu. Jehu, the father of Azariah. Azariah, the father of Helez. Helez, the father of Eleazar. Eleazar, the father of Sismai. Sismai, the father of Shallum. Shallum, the father of Jechamiah. And Jechamiah, the father of Elishama. There. That's the rhythm. That's the texture. That's the world. Names stacked on names stacked on names. Generations folded into generations folded into generations. And somewhere in that endless list of forgotten men, we find Jabez, a man who wasn't supposed to matter, a man who had no famous father, no royal lineage, no claim to greatness, just a prayer and a name. Let's come back to the 2 verses. 1 Chronicles chapter 4, verses 9 and 10. Jabez was more honorable than his brothers. His mother had named him Jabez, saying, I gave birth to him in pain. Jabez cried out to the God of Israel, Oh, that you would bless me and enlarge my territory. Let your hand be with me, and keep me from harm so that I will be free from pain. And God granted his request. Let's start with the name. Jabez. In Hebrew, it's pronounced Jabez, and it sounds almost exactly like the Hebrew word for pain. The word is otsev. Jabez, otsev, pain. His name is a pun, a grim one, a cruel one. His mother named him Pain, or maybe she who brought pain, or maybe he who causes suffering. The text tells us why. I gave birth to him in pain. Now, every birth involves pain. That's not news. That's biology. That's the human condition. But this must have been different. This must have been extraordinary, catastrophic. Maybe the labor lasted for days. Maybe she hemorrhaged. Maybe she tore. Maybe she developed a fever. Maybe the midwife thought she wouldn't survive. Maybe she thought she wouldn't survive. Maybe she screamed for hours. Maybe she begged for it to stop. Maybe she cursed the child inside her. We don't know. But we know it was bad enough that when the baby finally came, slick with blood and vernix, wailing his first breath, she looked at him and thought, I will name you after this suffering. And that's what she did. She named him Pain, not in a moment of postpartum fog, not as a temporary nickname. She named him Pain, officially, permanently. And every time someone called his name, they were invoking pain. Every introduction, every greeting, every conversation. Pain, can you help me with this? Pain, your mother is looking for you. Pain, come eat. Have you met my son, Pain? Imagine that. Imagine being 5 years old and learning what your name means. Imagine being 7 and having the other children tease you. Your name is Pain. Why would your mother name you that? Imagine being 10 and asking her, Mother, why did you name me this? And maybe she told him the truth. Maybe she said, because you hurt me. Or maybe she lied. Maybe she said, it's a good name. It means you're strong. But he would have known. Children always know. And here's the thing. In ancient Israel, names weren't just labels. Names were prophecies. Names carried weight. Names shaped destiny. If your name was Joshua, the Lord saves, that was a blessing over your life. If your name was David, beloved, that was an affirmation of worth. If your name was Solomon, peace, that was a hope for your future. But if your name was Pain, that was a curse. Not a magical curse, but a psychological one, a sociological one. Every single day you carried a label that told you and everyone else that you were associated with suffering, that your existence caused harm, that you were born from trauma, that you were unwanted. And the text tells us he had brothers, plural. So he wasn't an only child. He had siblings, and they presumably had normal names. They got to be Eliezer or Nathan or Benaiah. He got to be Pain. Do you think his brothers felt guilty? Do you think they defended him when other kids mocked him? Or do you think they joined in? Do you think his mother regretted it? Do you think there were nights when she couldn't sleep, thinking about what she'd done to him? Or did she feel justified? Did she look at him and think, you deserve this name, you earned it? We don't know. We'll never know. But we know Jabez carried that name for years, for decades, maybe for his entire life. And we know it shaped him because the prayer he eventually prays is a prayer about pain, about blessing, about territory, about God's hand, about being kept from harm. It's the prayer of a man who has spent his entire life trying to escape the thing he was named after. Before we get to the prayer itself, we need to understand the world Jabez lived in. Not the theological world, not the spiritual world, the physical world, the dirt under your fingernails, sweat on your back, aching muscles world. Because Jabez wasn't a priest, he wasn't a king, he wasn't a prophet, he was a farmer, or maybe a shepherd, or maybe both. Most people in ancient Judea were. And farming in Iron Age Israel wasn't romantic. It wasn't pastoral. It wasn't a series of soft focus images of men in tunics gently tending vineyards. It was brutal. It was grinding. It was relentless. So let's slow down. Let's walk through a day, a season, a year. Let's feel what Jabez felt. It's early, before dawn. The sky is still purple-black, with a thin line of pale gold on the eastern horizon. The air is cool, almost cold. Your breath mists in front of you as you walk toward the field. Your field, or maybe your father's field, or maybe a field you're renting from a wealthier landowner. It doesn't matter. What matters is that it needs to be plowed. The ground is hard, baked by months of summer sun, cracked, dry. The soil is a red-brown clay mixed with chunks of limestone. It's not soft, fertile loam. It's rocky, stubborn, hostile. You've brought the plow. It's made of wood. Oak, probably, with an iron tip at the end. The iron cost more than you wanted to spend, but you need it. Without it, the plow just skims the surface. The plow is heavy, maybe 40 pounds, and you'll be holding it for hours. You hitch the ox to the yoke. The ox is old, slow, but steady. You can't afford a young, strong ox, so you work with what you have. You grip the handles of the plow. The wood is smooth from years of use, worn, familiar. You click your tongue. The ox leans forward, and the plow bites into the earth. The first thing you feel is the vibration. The plow doesn't glide. It judders. It shakes. Every time the iron tip hits a rock, and it hits rocks constantly, the vibration shoots up the wooden handles and into your palms, your wrists, your forearms. After an hour, your hands are numb. After 2 hours, they're cramping. After 3 hours, they're bleeding. The wood rubs blisters into your palms. The blisters pop. The raw skin stings. But you keep going, because the field doesn't plow itself. The ox plods forward, slow, steady, one step at a time, and behind it, the plow drags a furrow through the earth. The soil peels away in thick, heavy clumps. Red-brown clay, dotted with white chunks of limestone. The furrow is maybe 6 inches deep, maybe 8 if you're lucky. It's not much, but it's enough. You reach the end of the field, you turn the ox around, and you start another furrow, parallel to the first, and then another, and another, and another. The earth smells like dust, like heat, like limestone. It's a dry smell, a mineral smell, not rich or loamy, just hard. But then, if you're lucky, the rains come, the early rains. In late October or early November, you see the clouds gathering on the western horizon, dark, heavy. You smell them before you feel them. The air changes, it gets cooler, wetter, and then the first drops fall. Fat, warm. They hit the hot limestone with a hiss. The smell that rises is incredible. It's the smell of dust meeting water, of dry earth drinking. It's called petrichor, and it smells like hope, because without the rains, nothing grows. Without the rains, you starve. So you stand in the field, face upturned, and you let the rain soak you, and you thank God. After the rain soften the earth, you sow. You take a leather bag filled with seed, barley probably, or wheat, maybe lentils. You sling the bag over your shoulder, and you walk the field. You reach into the bag, grab a handful of seed, and scatter it, broadcast style. A wide, sweeping arc of your arm. The seeds fly through the air. They land in the furrows, on the rocks, on the hard-packed paths between the furrows. Some will grow, most won't. But you scatter anyway, because that's all you can do. You walk the field, row by row, scattering seed. Your arm gets tired, Your shoulder aches, the bag gets lighter, and eventually the field is sown. And then you wait. This is the hardest part. Waiting. You've ploughed. You've sown. Now there's nothing to do but wait and pray. Pray that the rains continue. Not too much. Not too little. Just enough. Pray that the birds don't eat the seed. Pray that the locusts don't come. Pray that the weeds don't choke the crop. Pray that your neighbor's goats don't break through the fence and trample everything. Pray that God remembers you, because you've done your part. Now it's up to Him. And so you wait, weeks, months. You watch the field. You see the first green shoots pushing through the soil, fragile, delicate. You see them grow, slowly, inch by inch. You see the stalks thicken. The heads of grain form. You watch the color change from green to gold. And you wait. Finally, late spring, early summer, the grain is ready. The stalks are golden, dry, brittle. The heads are heavy with seed. You take a sickle, a curved blade, iron if you're lucky, bronze if you're not, and you bend down, grab a handful of stalks, and cut. The blade slices through the stems with a soft, dry sound. You gather the stalks in your other arm. Cut, gather, cut, gather. Your back is bent, 90 degrees, for hours, for days. The sun is brutal, relentless. It's summer now. The temperature is over 100 degrees. The air shimmers. There's no shade, no breeze, just heat. Your back screams, your legs tremble, your hands blister again. Different blisters this time, from the sickle. But you keep going, because if you don't harvest now, the grain will shatter. The seeds will fall to the ground, and you'll lose the crop. So you cut, and gather, and cut, and gather, until the field is bare. After the harvest, you thresh. You spread the stalks on a flat, hard surface, a threshing floor, usually a patch of bedrock, smooth, level. You take a wooden sledge, or you use the ox, and you drag it over the stalks, back and forth, back and forth. The weight crushes the stalks, breaks the grain free from the chaff, and then you winnow. You take a wooden fork. You toss the mixture into the air. The wind, if there's wind, blows the chaff away. The heavier grain falls back to the ground. You do this over and over. Toss. Let the chaff blow away. Gather the grain. Toss again, until you have a pile of clean grain and a pile of chaff. The grain goes into storage jars, clay jars, sealed with wax. This is your food for the year. This is your survival. This is the rhythm of life. Plow, sow, wait, harvest, thresh, winnow, store, and then do it again. Every year, every season, for your entire life. And if the rains don't come, you starve. If the locusts come, you starve. If your ox dies, you starve. There's no margin, no safety net, no backup plan. Just you and the land and God. And that's the world Jabez lived in. A world where survival was never guaranteed. Where every year was a gamble. Where the land was hard and the work was harder. And where asking God for enlarged territory wasn't greed. It was desperation, because more land meant more crops. More crops meant more food. More food meant survival, maybe even security, maybe even rest. And that's what Jabez wanted. Not wealth, not power, just room to breathe. So now, after years of carrying the name pain, after years of breaking his back in the fields, after years of waiting and praying and surviving, Jabez prays. And it's not a long prayer. It's not eloquent. It's not theologically sophisticated. It's just honest. Jabez cried out to the God of Israel. That's how it starts. Not Jabez prayed. Not Jabez spoke. Jabez cried out. The Hebrew word is kara. It means to call, to shout, to cry out with urgency. This isn't a polite formal prayer. This isn't liturgy. This is desperation. This is a man at the end of himself. A man who has carried something too heavy for too long. And he's calling out to God. Not just God. The God of Israel. This matters because Jabez is situating himself in the story of his people. He's not appealing to a generic deity. He's appealing to the God who called Abraham, the God who freed the Israelites from Egypt, the God who made promises, the God who has a track record of hearing the desperate, the God who listens to nobodies. And then he makes 4 requests, 4 short lines. Let's take them one at a time. Slowly. Request number 1. Oh, that you would bless me. Simple, direct, 3 words in Hebrew. Bless me, please. In Hebrew, the word for bless is barak, and it's a loaded term. To bless someone is to speak goodness over them, to grant favor, to enrich their life, to make their existence fruitful and meaningful. Jabez is asking for the opposite of his name. His name means pain. He's asking for blessing. He's asking for his life to mean something other than suffering. He's asking for his identity to be redefined, not by what his mother called him, but by what God calls him. And there's something beautiful in that, something deeply human, the desire to be renamed, to be seen not as the thing that hurt you or the thing that hurt others, but as something beloved, something chosen, something blessed. It's the cry of every person who's ever carried a label they didn't choose, every person who's ever been defined by their trauma, every person who's ever wanted to be more than their pain. Bless me, not because I deserve it, not because I've earned it, but because I need it, because I'm tired, because I can't keep living like this. Bless me. Request number 2. Enlarge my territory. Now. This one requires context, because on the surface, it sounds materialistic. Give me more land, expand my borders, make me wealthy. And maybe that's part of it. But let's think about what territory meant in ancient Israel. Your territory was your inheritance, your portion, your place in the world. It was the physical space where you could build a life, grow crops, raise a family, be secure. If you had no territory, you were vulnerable. You were a stranger, a wanderer, dependent on others. And in the world Jabez lived in, land wasn't easy to come by, because the land itself was hostile. Let's talk about the land, specifically the Shephelah, the Judean foothills. This is likely where Jabez lived, not in the mountains, not in the coastal plain, but in the rolling rocky hills between the two. And the Shephelah is not forgiving. It's beautiful in a harsh way, but it's not easy. The geology of the region is dominated by limestone, specifically a type of limestone called nari. Nari is a hard, crusty layer that forms on the surface of the soil. It's created when calcium carbonate in the soil is drawn to the surface by capillary action during the dry season. When the water evaporates, the calcium carbonate is left behind, and over time, it forms a crust, a hard, almost concrete-like layer, sometimes 6 inches thick, sometimes more. And if you want to farm, you have to break through it. Imagine trying to plow a field where the top 6 inches are solid rock. That's what nari is like. Your plow hits it and bounces off, or catches, or breaks, so you have to break the crust first, by hand, with a pickaxe, or a heavy mattock. You swing the tool down, it cracks the crust, you swing again, and again, and again, until you've broken through, and then you can plow, but only through the broken sections. The rest is still solid, so you break more crust, and plow more rows, and break more crust, and plow more rows. It's slow, it's exhausting, it's the kind of work that makes your shoulders burn and your hands bleed, but it's necessary, Because under the crust, there's soil, not great soil, not deep, rich, black soil, but soil nonetheless. Red clay mixed with small stones, thin, rocky, but workable, if you can get to it. And under the soil, deep underground, there's water, not surface water. There are no rivers in the Shephelah, no lakes, no streams that flow year-round, but there are aquifers, underground reservoirs, rainwater that seeps down through the limestone, finds its way into cracks and fissures, pools in underground chambers, and if you're lucky, if you know where to dig, you can reach it. You can dig a well or a cistern. You can line it with stones, plaster it with lime to keep it from leaking, and you can store water for the dry season, for the months when it doesn't rain, for survival. But digging a well is hard. It takes weeks, months. You have to dig through solid rock. With hand tools, you have to haul the broken rock up from the bottom of the shaft, bucket by bucket. You have to brace the walls to keep them from collapsing, and you have to pray that you actually find water. Because sometimes you dig 30 feet down and find nothing, and all that work is wasted. And if you want to farm on a slope, which most of the Shephelah is, you have to build terraces. Terraces are retaining walls made of stone, dry stacked, no mortar, just carefully fitted rocks. You build them to hold the soil on the slope, because if you don't, the rains will wash the soil away, down the hill, into the valley, gone. So you gather rocks, and there are plenty of rocks. The fields are full of them. You pick them up, one at a time. You carry them to the edge of your field, and you stack them, carefully, deliberately, building a wall maybe 2 feet high, maybe 3, and behind the wall you fill in soil, carried from elsewhere, or broken from the nari crust, or composted from manure and crop waste. You build the soil up, level it, and now you have a flat section of land, maybe 10 feet wide, maybe 20, and you can plant there. But it's taken you weeks to build that one terrace, and you need dozens, hundreds if you want a real farm. So you spend years building terraces, stacking rocks, filling soil, creating arable land where there was only slope. So when Jabez prays, "Enlarge my territory," he's not asking for a mansion. He's not asking for luxury. He's asking for more land, more workable, farmable, survivable land, which means more backbreaking labor, more rocks to stack, more crust to break, more wells to dig, but also more space, more crops, more security, more room to breathe, more room to hope. He's asking for the land to open up, for the rocky, cramping walls of his existence to push back, for God to give him room. And that's not greed, that's survival, that's hope. That's a man saying, "I don't want to spend my whole life trapped in 6 square feet of broken earth." And God hears him. Request number 3, let your hand be with me. Now we're getting to the heart of it, your hand. In Hebrew, yad. The hand of God is a symbol of power, presence, and protection. When God's hand is with you, you're not alone. You're not abandoned. You're not left to fend for yourself against a hostile world. Jabez has probably felt very alone. A man named Pain tends to be isolated. People avoid you, not because you've done anything wrong, but because your name is a reminder of suffering. And nobody wants to be reminded of suffering. Nobody wants to sit next to Pain at dinner. Nobody wants to marry Pain. Nobody wants to partner with Pain. So you end up alone, working alone, eating alone, sleeping alone. And after years of that, you start to wonder if God is with you either. If maybe God has forgotten you too. If maybe you're too small, too broken, too painful for God to care about. So Jabez asks, "Let your hand be with me. Don't leave me alone. Don't abandon me. Walk with me. Work with me. be present, be near. It's a plea for companionship, for intimacy, for the assurance that he's not walking through life solo, that there's someone who sees him, who knows him, who stays. Request number 4, keep me from harm so that I will be free from pain. And here it is, the core of the prayer, the thing he's been building toward. Keep me from harm, keep me from evil, keep me from pain. In Hebrew, the phrase is lebilti atzvi, that I might not experience pain. He wants out. He wants the cycle to stop. He doesn't want to cause pain. He doesn't want to live in pain. He wants to be free. And he's asking God to do what he cannot do for himself. He can't rename himself. He can't erase his past. He can't undo his mother's trauma or his own. But maybe God can. Maybe God can keep the pain at bay. Maybe God can give him a life that isn't defined by suffering. And so he prays. Not a long, eloquent prayer, not a theologically sophisticated prayer, just 4 simple requests from a man who's tired of hurting. And here's the stunning part. And God granted his request. 5 words in English, 3 words in Hebrew. Vayav lo Elohim. And God brought to him. God said yes. God heard this prayer from this obscure man in the middle of a genealogy and said, okay, I'll bless you. I'll enlarge your territory. I'll be with you. I'll keep you from harm. We don't get details. The text doesn't tell us how God answered. It doesn't give us a before and after. It doesn't say, and Jabez became rich, or, and Jabez lived to be 120, or, and Jabez's territory grew to include 3 villages and a well. It just says, God granted his request. And then Jabez disappears. He's never mentioned again. Not in Chronicles, not in any other book of the Bible. He prays, God answers. And that's the end of the story. But maybe that's the point. Maybe the lack of detail is the gift, because it means the answer wasn't about external circumstances. It wasn't about wealth or land or status. It was about something internal, something between Jabez and God. God heard him. God saw him. God said, I know you've carried pain your whole life, and I'm going to lift it. And he did, however that looked, whatever that meant, it happened. And Jabez was free. What do you think Jabez did after God answered his prayer? Do you think he woke up the next morning feeling lighter, like someone had lifted a stone off his chest? Do you think he walked through his village and noticed that people looked at him differently, or that he looked at himself differently? Do you think he told anyone? Did he gather his brothers and say, you won't believe what just happened? Or did he keep it quiet? A private moment between him and God, a secret blessing that didn't need to be broadcast. We don't know, and I think that silence is important, because so often we think transformation has to be loud. It has to be visible. It has to be a testimony. We think God's work has to be dramatic, public, undeniable. But sometimes the deepest changes happen in the quiet. Sometimes God answers a prayer, and the only person who knows is you. You feel it. You know something shifted. Something broke loose. Something heavy was lifted. But from the outside, your life looks the same. You still have the same job, the same house, the same fields to plow, the same rocks to stack. But inside, you're different. Inside, you're free. Maybe that's what happened to Jabez. Maybe he went back to his fields, back to his plow, back to breaking the Nari crust and stacking terrace walls, back to the grinding rhythm of survival. But now, when people called him pain, it didn't sting anymore, because he knew God had renamed him, not officially, not on any census, not in any genealogy, but in the place that mattered, in his heart, in his identity, in the story he told himself about who he was. He was no longer the boy his mother named in suffering. He was the man God blessed. And maybe that's what enlarging his territory really meant. Not physical land, but internal space. The territory of his soul. Room to breathe, room to hope. Room to believe that his life could be about more than survival. And maybe that's what keeping him from harm really meant. Not that nothing bad ever happened to him again. Not that he never got sick or injured or disappointed, but that the pain no longer defined him. It could touch his life, but it couldn't own his life. It couldn't name him anymore. Let's zoom out for a moment, because there's something strange about this whole thing. Jabez appears in a genealogy, but genealogies are about lineage. They're about who your father was, who your grandfather was, who your great-great-great-grandfather was. They're about bloodlines, family trees, succession. But Jabez, we don't know who his father was. We don't know who his mother was beyond the fact that she named him Pain. We don't know if he had children. We don't know if his line continued. The genealogy just says Jabez was more honorable than his brothers. And then it tells us about his prayer. And then it moves on. It's almost like the chronicler inserted him into the genealogy not because he belonged there by bloodline, but because he belonged there by character. More honorable than his brothers. That's the description. Not more successful, not more wealthy, not more powerful, more honorable. The Hebrew word is kavod. It means honor, glory, weightiness. It's the word used to describe God's glory, the weight of God's presence. And it's the word used to describe Jabez, this man who carried a name that meant pain, this man who cried out to God in desperation, this man who was heard. He's kavod. He has weight, he has worth, he has honor, not because of his ancestry, not because of his achievements, but because of his faith, because he was brave enough to ask God for something better, and God was kind enough to give it. And maybe that's why the chronicler paused to tell his story, because in the middle of a list of forgotten names, a list of people defined by their fathers and grandfathers and great-grandfathers, here's a man who mattered for a different reason, not because of who came before him, not because of who came after him, but because of who he was, a man who prayed and was heard. Let's sit with the theme of pain for a moment, because it's central to this story. It's woven through every line. Jabez is named Pain. His mother gave birth to him in pain. He prays to be kept from pain. And pain, of course, is universal. You've felt it. I've felt it. Everyone listening to this has felt it. Physical pain, the sharp, stabbing kind, the dull, aching kind, the chronic, grinding kind. Emotional pain, the pain of loss, the pain of betrayal, the pain of failure, the pain of shame, the pain of loneliness, the pain of feeling unseen, unheard, unloved. And here's the thing about pain. It has a way of becoming your identity. At first, it's just something you're experiencing. I'm in pain. But after a while, it shifts. It becomes something you are. I am pain. You start to believe that pain is all you are, that suffering is your destiny, that you were born into it and you'll die in it and there's no way out. And sometimes people even name you by your pain. Not literally, like Jabez, but functionally. They see you as the person who's always struggling, always hurting, always broken. Oh, that's just how they are. They've always been like that. They've had a hard life. And after a while, you start to see yourself that way too. You become your pain, your trauma, your wound, and you forget that there was ever anything else. But Jabez's prayer is a challenge to that. It's a refusal to accept pain as the final word. It's a belief, maybe a desperate, fragile belief, that there's more, that life doesn't have to be defined by suffering, that God might have something better in mind. And God says yes. God says, I see you, and I see more for you than this. That's the gospel hidden in these two verses. Not that God will take away all pain, not that life will be easy or comfortable or free from hardship, but that pain doesn't get to be your name. That suffering doesn't get to be your identity. That there's space for blessing, for growth, for presence, for freedom, even in a world that hurts. Let's come back to the prayer one more time, because I think each line has something to teach us, something to sit with. Oh, that you would bless me. This is the courage to want something good, to believe that you deserve goodness, that your life can have meaning beyond survival. A lot of people who've been hurt struggle with this. They feel guilty for wanting blessing. They feel selfish for hoping for something better. They think, I should just be grateful for what I have. I should just accept my lot. I should just endure. But Jabez doesn't apologize for asking. He doesn't minimize his pain or downplay his need. He just asks, bless me. And God honors that. God doesn't say, you're being greedy. God doesn't say, you should be content with less. God says yes, because God is not stingy. God is not begrudging. God delights in blessing his children, even the ones who don't think they deserve it, especially the ones who don't think they deserve it. Enlarge my territory. This is the courage to want growth, to believe that your life doesn't have to stay small, that you're allowed to take up space in the world, to have ambitions, to dream, to ask for more than the bare minimum. So many of us shrink ourselves. We make ourselves small to avoid being a burden, to avoid being too much, to avoid taking up space that someone else might need. But Jabez says, give me room. And God says, okay, because God doesn't want us to live cramped, suffocated lives. God wants us to have space, room to grow, room to flourish, room to become who we were meant to be. Lay your hand be with me. This is the courage to ask for presence, to admit that you can't do it alone, that you need help, that you need companionship, that you need God. There's no shame in that. There's no weakness in that. It's just honesty. And God responds to honesty. God doesn't need our pretense, our performance, our full strength. God wants our vulnerability, our need, our honest cry for help. And when we bring that, God meets us there. Keep me from harm so that I will be free from pain. This is the courage to name what you fear, to say, I'm tired of hurting, to ask for protection, to ask for peace, not as a demand, not as an entitlement, but as a plea. Please, I don't want to live like this anymore. And God hears, God sees, God answers, not always in the way we expect, not always on our timeline, but God answers. In the year 2000, a man named Bruce Wilkinson published a book. It was a small book, 93 pages, blue cover, simple design. It was called The Prayer of Jabez, Breaking Through to the Blessed Life, and it became a phenomenon. It sold 9 million copies in 2 years. It was on the New York Times bestseller list for over 2 years. It was translated into dozens of languages. Churches held Jabez prayer campaigns. Small groups studied it. Christians prayed the prayer every day for 30 days, hoping for breakthrough, hoping for blessing, hoping for enlarged territory, hoping for God's hand on their lives. The book promised that if you prayed this ancient prayer with faith, God would bless you in extraordinary ways. Your life would expand. Your influence would grow. Your fears would diminish. Your impact would increase. It was marketed as a kind of spiritual life hack, a biblical formula for success, a guaranteed method for breakthrough. And a lot of people loved it. A lot of people found comfort in it, found hope in it, found language for longings they didn't know how to express. But a lot of people also criticized it. They said it turned prayer into a transaction, that it reduced God to a vending machine. Insert prayer, receive blessing. That it promoted a prosperity gospel, that it made God's favor dependent on saying the right words, that it missed the point entirely. And maybe both groups were right. Maybe the book tapped into something real, a deep human longing for blessing, for God's presence, for freedom from pain, and gave people language for that longing. But maybe it also oversimplified things, because Jabez wasn't praying a formula. He wasn't trying to unlock a spiritual cheat code. He was crying out from a place of desperation, from a place of deep accumulated pain, from a place where he had nothing left to lose. He wasn't trying to hack the system. He was trying to survive, and God met him there. Not because he said the right words in the right order, not because he prayed for 30 days straight, but because he was honest, because he was vulnerable, because he brought his pain to God and said, "Help." And that's something we can learn from, not as a formula, but as an example. Prayer isn't about magic words. It's about honesty, about vulnerability, about bringing our whole selves, pain and all, to God, and trusting that God hears. Let's talk about what the text doesn't tell us. Because sometimes what's missing is as important as what's there. We don't know if Jabez was young or old when he prayed. We don't know if this was a lifelong prayer he'd been praying for decades, or if it was a sudden, desperate cry in a moment of crisis. We don't know if he was married, if he had children, if he was wealthy or poor, if he was sick or healthy. We don't know what specific harm he was asking to be protected from. Was it physical danger, enemies, disease, or was it emotional harm, the fear of causing more pain, the fear of becoming like his mother? We don't know. We don't know what his life looked like before the prayer, and we don't know what it looked like after. All we know is that he prayed, and God answered, and he was more honorable than his brothers. That's it. And I think that's intentional, because if we knew all the details, we'd try to replicate them. We'd think, okay, Jabez was 42 years old, unmarried, working as a shepherd, dealing with chronic back pain, and he prayed at sunrise on a Thursday while facing east. So that's the formula. And we'd miss the whole point, because there is no formula. There's just honesty. There's just prayer. There's just God and the relationship between a person and their creator. That's what the story is about. Not a method, not a technique, not a guaranteed 5-step process to breakthrough. Just a man who was tired of being defined by pain, and a God who said, "You don't have to be." So what's the legacy of Jabez? What did he leave behind? Not descendants, as far as we know. The text doesn't mention children, doesn't mention a family line, doesn't mention anyone who carried on his name. He didn't leave wealth. He didn't build monuments. He didn't write books. He didn't lead armies. He didn't found cities. He just prayed, and God said yes. And 2,000 years later, we're still talking about it, because the story resonates. It resonates with anyone who's ever felt limited by their past, by their name, by their pain, by the labels other people put on them. It resonates with anyone who's ever wanted more. Not more stuff, but more life, more space, more freedom, more God. And it resonates because it reminds us that God hears, God sees, God answers. Not always the way we expect, not always on our timeline, but he answers. And sometimes the greatest legacy isn't what you build or what you leave behind. Sometimes the greatest legacy is a moment of faith, a cry for help, a God who listens, and a life transformed, quietly, privately, profoundly. Let's close with a meditation. Not on the prayer itself, but on the idea of blessing. because that's what Jabez asked for. Oh, that you would bless me. What does it mean to be blessed? It doesn't mean life is easy. It doesn't mean you never suffer. It doesn't mean you get everything you want. It doesn't mean you're immune to pain or loss or disappointment. To be blessed means to be seen by God, to be known, to be loved, to have your existence affirmed, to hear God say, "You matter. Your life has meaning. I'm with you." That's blessing. And it's available to everyone, not because we earn it, not because we pray the right words, not because we're good enough or smart enough or faithful enough, but because God is generous, because God delights in giving good things to his children, even the ones named pain, especially the ones named pain, because those are the ones who know what it's like to need blessing, to crave it, to cry out for it in desperation. And God hears those cries. He heard Jabez, and he hears you. Whatever name you carry, whatever pain you've endured, whatever label you've been given, God sees you, God knows you, and God says, you don't have to be defined by that anymore. I have more for you. I have blessing for you. I have space for you. I have presence for you. I have freedom for you. And all you have to do is ask, honestly, vulnerably, without pretense, just, God, I need you. I need your blessing. I need your presence. I need your hand. I need to be free from this pain. And God will answer. Maybe not the way you expect, maybe not on your timeline, but he will answer, because that's who God is, the God who hears, the God who sees, the God who blesses, even nobodies, even the forgotten, even the ones named pain. So that's the story of Jabez, a man who lived and died in obscurity, a man who appears for 2 verses and then vanishes, a man who had no famous ancestors, no royal lineage, no claim to greatness, just a name he didn't choose, and a prayer he couldn't help but pray, and a God who listened. His name was Pain, but God gave him something better. God gave him blessing. God gave him presence. God gave him space. God gave him freedom. And maybe tonight, as you drift off to sleep, you can take that with you. The idea that your past doesn't define your future, that your pain doesn't have to be your name, that the labels other people put on you don't have to stick, that there's a God who hears, who sees, who answers, and who says, I have more for you than this. I have blessing for you. I have space for you. I have freedom for you. Ask me, cry out to me, and I will answer. Rest in that, rest in him, and sleep well.